Welcome, everybody. Hi, my name is Sheila Waterhouse. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Corporate Relations here at Michigan Chemical Engineering. And we're delighted to host this program for our chemical engineering community, primarily focused on our undergrads who we asked some questions. We asked them, how do you want to engage with industry? What is helpful for you to learn about, to hear from, to participate in? And one of the things we heard was students want to know how to get ready for their summer internships. Specifically in chemical engineering, because certainly you're taking things from the classroom and you're going directly into an industry application and able to really connect some of those dots. So we reached out to some of our alums in a variety of industries to see who might be able to help provide some really interesting expertise, both from students who are alumni who are new in industry, who have graduated recently, or who are more established and maybe hire and manage interns in their companies. So today we have 4 of the 5 people on the screen here. Sorry to say that Skylar Knapp just was in, but got pulled into an important meeting and had to leave us a minute ago. So that's that's life in the real job. That's how things work. One of the couple of housekeeping things before we get really started. Please bear with us. This is our first webinar. The settings are different than a Zoom call, and so we're going to do our best to make sure that this is smooth and seamless. The Q&A function is open, so please ask some questions and add them in there, and we'll get to those at the Q&A portion of this. We are recording this, so if anybody wants to have access to this later, we will have that available in the next week or so. And as usual at Michigan, the closed caption settings here at the bottom of the screen, so you can click that if you so choose. So let's get started. We have 4 panelists who are coming to us from, I would say, a variety of different places in the country and different industries, and they're all chemical engineering alums and Michigan engineering alums with either an undergrad or an undergrad and a master's. So I'd like to ask you all to introduce yourselves. Let me put your faces. Let me get your faces going here. Spotlight. Well, maybe you go first, Madison.
Yeah, my face just popped up big, so I will go for it. So hi guys, my name is Madison Carroll. I graduated from University of Michigan Chemical Engineering a couple years ago in spring of 2022. I currently work as a R&D process engineer at General Mills, specifically for our brand Blue Buffalo. We make pet food, which some of you might not know, but super exciting. In terms of internship experience, I interned. Both my internships are during COVID, which I can talk about more later in this panel, but I interned at DuPont in summer of 2020, which is a chemical company, and then I interned at General Mills in summer of 2021, and then accepted a full-time offer, and that's how I got this job, and I work in our Minneapolis-based R&D center.
Marcos, you want to go?
Yeah, sure thing. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marcos Haji Harlembos. I currently work as the lithium planning advisor within ExxonMobil's low carbon solutions business, where I'm focused on developing new businesses to help ExxonMobil lead in the energy transition and helps overall society realize a lower emission future. I graduated in 2018 with a chemical engineering degree and minor in business. I did grad school at University of Michigan as well in energy systems engineering, graduating in 2019. During my time at Michigan, I was fortunate to have 3 different internships during undergrad. So one after my freshman year was working for a renewable energy company called Euro Energy. where I was focused on creating and tracking different key performance indicators for their operating solar and wind farms, as well as helping in the early stages of the front end engineering and design of a new biogas facility that they were planning to invest in. In my sophomore year, I took a research fellowship, but I also combined it with interning with the professor that I was doing research for. He had a startup company. So I was doing both research for him in the lab as well as working part-time for his startup company. And in my junior year, worked for Detroit Edison in their corporate fuel supply department. And after I graduated, since I was doing my grad school, I did take a full-time job, but it was kind of like an internship because I knew I was going back to school in 4 months. So I was working as a full-time employee for a company in the oil and gas industry. Yep, after that, went back to grad school and was able to get recruited by ExxonMobil, and that's been at ExxonMobil now for almost 5 years.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Molly, you're next to my Zoom square. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Molly Adolph. I am a manufacturing engineering manager at Boston Scientific, specifically in our polymer extrusion factory, which was located just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I graduated from Michigan with a degree in chemical engineering in 2014. And my experience with internships from the perspective of when I was a student is I had one summer internship the summer prior to my senior year at Andersen Windows and Doors. And then sort of on the professional side of things, starting from, when I entered the professional world, being a mentor for interns, and then recently moved on to recruiting interns. And now I've had a couple of interns report to me every summer for the past 5 or 6 years. So yeah, excited to be part of this panel today.
Have you had any Michigan interns?
I have, and I will have another one this summer. So looking forward to it.
Great. Last but not least, Michelle.
All right, I guess it's me. I guess I'm the ranking old timer among this crowd, which feels a little weird, but
amongst you, but I'm on the call too. So
oh, good. Thanks, Sheila. But I graduated from ChE in 2009. And then I started at GM a few months later. So I was lucky to find this job through Susan Montgomery, who was the undergrad. I forget the term, but she helped us all out at that time. And so then I've been here now for 15 years, which is crazy. I started working in environmental catalysis, so working on catalytic converter development. And then the last 5 years or so now, I've been working on lithium-ion batteries, mostly related to understanding battery fires and thermal runaway. As a junior at U of M, I did an internship at Schwann Stabilo, which is a cosmetics company in Germany. So that was a really cool experience to get to do an internship in another country. I also minored in German, so it was like the perfect way to get some kind of lab experience and also practice my German interest. And yeah, I guess that's it for now. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of this, Sheila.
Oh, thanks all of you for being here. I'd love to start off with a question about when you had an internship, and Madison, this question was initially for you, but anybody else who wants to answer as well. Since Madison, you've had them most recently, can you share what you've got out of your internship, what you did right, what you were happy with, what worked for you, and what you wish you might have done differently?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question. Like I said, I had kind of a unique experience being really deep in the middle of COVID for both of my internships in college in general. So I definitely think things are a little bit different now. And to dive deeper into what my internships were. So in 2020, I was an intern at DuPont, chemical engineering intern. Honestly, didn't leave the office much or get to be like boots on the ground in the plant because of COVID. So I think I'd rather talk more about my General Mills internship, which was actually remote. I was working for like our R&D center in Minneapolis, but I was actually in my apartment in Ann Arbor in the summer of 2021. But I got to work on our cereal portfolio, which is super cool. Like working on cereals that you guys might eat, like Wheaties, Lucky Charms, Reese's Puffs. So super fun space to work in. And I think the main thing that I got out of my internship that I hope you guys would get out of your internship too is really just figuring out like what you like and what you don't like, because I think there's so much pressure to try to figure out what you want to do, even just going into college, but also like thinking about what's next after college, whether it's grad school or like a full-time job. You really get the chance to spend a summer at a company and figuring out, first of all, if you like the work that they're doing and if it interests you and excites you. And then also, if you, I guess, for lack of a better word, like vibe like with the company itself, and the culture, I think that's equally as important. And I think I really found that at General Mills when I was an intern, being that I couldn't have the hands-on experience that I would have gotten if it wasn't COVID, like working in a plant, working in our bench tops, doing experimentation. I really used the summer to understand what General Mills is all about, our products, what we make, what someone in my role as a processing engineer could do in their career path. And then also like what I was most passionate about and like what products I might lean towards, if I were to, you know, work there full time in the future, which I do. So I think culture was a huge thing. And I think networking, which I think we'll talk about later in this, is a huge part of that. Just meeting as many people as you can, because I can't even tell you how many people I work with full time now that I met as a little intern, and I never would have thought, oh, I'd be working like on their team one day. So I think that's super rewarding and cool to look back on. So that's what I would say.
Thanks, that's great. Does anybody else want to weigh in on internship experience? What worked, what didn't, what you got out of it?
Yeah, I can go ahead and talk about what didn't work well. Since I think Madison covered you know, a lot of the key messages, I would reiterate the same thing about, you know, using the time to most importantly test like what are you interested in, what does a working life look like, and especially test the culture aspect of a company. I think that's super important to make sure when you do get a full-time job, you find it very rewarding. I think my advice with internships from personal experience, where I went wrong was sometimes biting off more than I could chew. So the internship, you know, could be 2 months, could be 3 months, could be 6 weeks. You know, it really everyone has different lengths of time, but I know in my first internship, I had a lot of different things I was really interested in, and I had ideas of different projects that I could complete in the time frame of the internship. And as I got towards the end of the internship, you know, I had basically 3 incomplete projects, and that's not very valuable for the company that you're working for, because typically they either design intern projects to be completed or for easy transition or easy handoff. And yeah, that was like a big lesson learned I had from my first internship, was just having a less broad focus when it came to like specific tasks and projects, to be more in line with something that can actually be completed in the time of the internship. So I'd encourage, you know, do that early on. That way you're not, you know, 2-3 weeks left in your internship and struggling to figure out how you're gonna finish projects.
Well, that sounds like a good question too for an intern when they're coming in, you know, asking, what's the scope of this, and what's the deliverable and the timeline, and can I finish this, and manage expectations that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, creating clarity with whoever your supervisor or mentor is, from the very beginning, I think is paramount.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, Molly and Michelle, could you talk a little bit about what you see successful interns doing that you might suggest to ChE students?
Sure. So I think maybe this goes without being said, but I would say first and foremost, whatever projects you get assigned to work on, really make sure you take the time to like dig deep and do them well, because I think this is your opportunity to show, what you've been learning in school and then apply it into the real world. So definitely just make sure that, you're really giving those things you're all asking a lot of questions and trying to make the most of. And if you find yourself with extra bandwidth, don't be afraid to ask for, additional projects or things to work on. But definitely think, those projects that most companies are carefully selected for a reason. So making sure you really, give it your all. I think a lot of this was touched on with the answers to previous questions, but I think networking is really important too. And I think that there's a couple of benefits to that, like networking and asking all the questions that you can, so you can learn about other functions outside of maybe the one you're working in, and getting to know people to get a sense of the culture, what other roles are there within the company. So maybe you love the culture, but not the specific role you're in. Is there a different area that you could find to work in? And I also think that like networking and getting to meet people is also a really great way to meet mentors or just ask individuals for feedback on how they think things are going. It could be your project, it could be maybe a presentation that you have, and just really taking that feedback to heart, like full 360 feedback. So, I wouldn't say just be asking for feedback from your manager and your mentor, but also, any peers that you might have, because I think anywhere you can get useful advice to make things better is going to be really important in the internship experience and throughout your career. There's sort of always ways to continue learning and improving. And I would say the last thing is have fun. I think as someone from the hiring perspective of someone who makes decisions of like what interns get converted, we want the people who we think are going to stick around for a while, and hopefully that means it's because you like what you're doing, and yes, it should be challenging, but hopefully you're enjoying the challenge. So work hard, but hopefully have fun doing it too. So get involved in the events, get to know people, that kind of stuff.
That gets back to Marcus's comment on culture too, having fun and really getting involved and contributing to the culture in a way employers see that. And yeah, that makes a difference. Michelle, did you have anything to add?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you guys all covered a lot of really great things. I got to reiterate kind of what Molly said. Make sure you take initiative on whatever project you're offered, right? And kind of own that project, give it your best try. Also, I mean, don't be afraid to ask for help if you're trying to learn something, but make sure you give it a good try first, because probably the permanent employees you're working with are probably all really busy, so they want to make sure you value their time. And I think also asking someone for help, that can be like a great way to build a relationship, over your course of your internship. So, and a great way to learn a lot of different skills that you can take with you moving forward. And then just reiterating to the networking thing, I think networking with the permanent employees, but also networking with other interns. I think that's like a really special time, right? You don't have, it's kind of like being in college, like there's a bunch of people there that are not in their normal environment, right? They're looking to meet people, and it's a great time to like build really good lasting friendships and networking for future career. You never know where people will end up down the line. So.
It's a different kind of, it's a part of the network. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. I think like a lot of companies like GM, like they treat their interns better than any other employee. So make sure you take advantage of all the opportunities, that are available, like tours or like networking events. Yeah.
Baseball games.
Yeah.
All the free swag, get it while you're an intern,
Yeah,
because
right.
there's a lot of it.
To the real employees. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely true. One thing I'd just like to add, and I think the other panelists have touched on it. Companies, especially larger companies, typically have intern projects in mind. And there's a lot, at least at ExxonMobil, I've designed a lot of these myself for interns I've had, and a lot of thought goes into them, and a lot of time, different, subject matter experts putting together those projects. So definitely agree with Michelle. Like, take it if you're given an intern project, take initiative, like understand that, this is something that will be of great value to the company and to the department you're in. But not every company will design an intern project for you. At least in my case, I had one internship where there was no intern project, and it was kind of like come up with it yourself. And in that experience, what I found really helpful was like the networking aspect of just the first couple of weeks meeting different people and different areas that I would be working with to understand what the pain points were and what potential there was for efficiency improvements. And then that helped me kind of design an intern project and working with my mentor at the time to do something that was actually feasible for the duration of the internship.
Well, your comment leads to two other related questions that I want to get into. And one is very academic in focus. So when this might be a hard one to answer because industries are vastly different, jobs are vastly different, positions, roles, project scope. But in your experience, for ChE students to come in, what are they learning that is going to be really important for them to file in their brains and keep fresh and ready to apply or to add that lens to over their summer experience?
I can start with maybe a couple things. So I work in a laboratory environment. So definitely any experience you have working in the lab, if that's something you're interested in, like any safety training, that's super important when you get into industry, that you know the rules that you should be following in a lab setting. Like also for me, any kind of the hands-on lab classes we had in ChE were very helpful when I came into the lab. Like the first day that I came in, I had to draw a diagram of a laboratory reactor we were using, try to figure out where the gas lines flowed and everything so I could start using that system. So I think for a lab type setting, all those classes were really helpful.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of coming from maybe the opposite end of the spectrum of most of my professional career being in more sort of industrial manufacturing settings. But what's interesting is I think is one of the things that you touched on as being a useful skill is that ability to sort of take a step back and map out a process or like a specific part of a process. And so I think, being able to use that skill of understanding like the flow of operations, which I think is really applicable no matter what industry you go to, but using that skill set of like, determining what the stages are in the process, what's happening in those stages. So how do you get from point A to point B, no matter what it is, taking that time to make sure you really understand that can help you come up with even like more in-depth questions to ask. But I would also say, as someone who has spent my career spanning industries, all sort of operations focused, I would say a lot of the skill sets that I've found to be very useful are things that I learned in school maybe weren't like the hard academic concepts, but like the collaboration and teamwork from the team projects or just like getting through homework sets together with, your friends and peers. And like, I guess maybe also a certain amount of like resiliency of like trying a homework problem and not getting it for hours. I think that has been really beneficial in my career of like, I feel like my head has hit a wall. I'll set it down for a second, then circle back and then find an answer. And just like the general problem solving. So maybe it's not quite as specific as like, oh yeah, I use thermo and everything. Not so much. But a lot of those like other types of skills I think have really been beneficial throughout my career, no matter what industry I've been in.
I would echo what Molly said. I feel like I'm in a similar role. I work a lot in our pilot plant in Minneapolis, but then like right now I'm in Indiana at a full plant trial, like one of our manufacturing plants. So definitely didn't get much exposure to fully that in college, just a lot of it was benchtop if we did anything like that. But I still think like your 460 and 360, I think could offer great insight in like those senior lab classes. But especially what Molly said, like the soft skills that you might learn, I think teamwork is critical. And even if you don't enjoy a lot in college, unfortunately, if you end up in a job like ours, you're probably going to be doing it a lot, and you need to know how to work with different types of people, even if you might have different working styles. It's really something that you're going to have to embrace when you go into industry if you choose to do so, and can get you a lot farther than if you try to take something on your own. And I don't know, it's not going to work in the long run. So I think that was something super critical that, I mean, we're all still working on, I'm sure, but I think is something that was really valuable in college that could help you in an internship.
You know, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with a colleague at another university, and one of the trends that they're seeing is freshman design courses. So while most programs offer senior design courses, that's great to get people ready for their last internship or for going into industry in these applications you're mentioning. But having something at a freshman level then poses people to build on those skills in summer internships in a deeper way. So interesting ideas to explore and help students prepare as they go forward.
One plug on that, I'll say, I don't know if it's going to be a class next year, Sheila. I hope we can influence that it can be, but the E100, 300, like the food science one, I think I took it one of the first years. It was a class with Dr. Hirschfield, and I know she just left the University of Michigan for another job, but that I think was really critical to, first of all, helping me realize a ChE can work in the food industry and CPG, but also we did do like real design projects with small businesses around Michigan and help them do like some manufacturing type work and supply chain. And that's a lot of what I do right now. So I think I totally agree that earlier you can get exposed to that kind of stuff is super important. And I loved that class.
Well, I will say when we did ask students what they want to hear from industry and ask what kind of industries, all of your industries were top of the list. So you know, in the food science certainly is one that's important. That's the nice thing about maybe the College of Engineering has such breadth and expertise in so many fields that it allows us to really, chemies are everywhere. You can go into so many different areas. Okay, so can we talk a little bit about when an intern is in your company you know, chemies are in all types of roles. What opportunities are there? What tips do you have for students to kind of explore? You know, they've got an internship and they can't really try on a lot of different hats, but they can see different roles and opportunities. How do you envision them exploring those kinds of options?
Yeah, I can take a stab at this question. In my experience, I've had multiple ChE interns in different roles while at ExxonMobil, and they've been different levels. So like we had a freshman internship, a sophomore, and a junior. And basically, I would always try to understand what classes the intern has taken to help design the specific, intern project that we were designing. But I do think it's an opportunity to really showcase, the skill set and knowledge that you've developed in taking these rigorous chemical engineering classes directly in an internship. So would encourage you to try and think about how the different application of different classes could be utilized in the specific internship. And, in my experience, a lot of the role I was in for quite some time was extremely chemical engineering heavy. So it's pretty easy to design things, that covered in-depth thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, mass and heat transfer, in a day-to-day sort of job role. And it's not always going to be the case for other ChE internships, but certainly if you have an internship that is very much focused on chemical engineering, then you should be able to directly apply the classes you've taken in that internship.
And I guess maybe some advice that I would give, or maybe just speaking to my personal experience, is, when you're in your internship, take advantage of like the tours, and again, going back to networking, just to learn like what other things could a person with a chemical do in industry. And to use my internship as an example is like the specific project I was assigned in the like technology area and the stuff that I was working on and the industry I was in, I didn't really love. Like I wasn't that interested in becoming a full-time person at that company. But I did meet somebody there, like another intern who was working in an extrusion area, which was not a technology I had ever heard of before doing this internship. Like wasn't really something we talked about much at school, but I just thought it was absolutely fascinating. So then when it was time to apply for jobs, I actually applied for jobs in the pet food industry because I knew that they used extrusion. And so even though it wasn't like the area my internship was in, through networking, through taking tours of the company, I found like a technology I became really interested in. And now I've sort of carried my interest in that specific technology across different industries. So pet food to automotive, now to med device. So I guess maybe one thing I would say is that like if your internship to you doesn't feel like a perfect fit, I guess I just would hope you know that like there's still so many other opportunities out there and there's still so much you could still learn about what you want to do in the long run. That like there's benefit no matter where it goes, and you never know where it might lead you just by taking a tour of the facility you're working at or talking with your peers on the kinds of things they're working on.
One of the other topics that students were interested in is, great, I'm a chemie in industry now. How do I level up to a manager? Because so many, I mean, that's often the career progression, and maybe less technical focused and more administration focused. So the continual education that happens when you're working to build skills in a variety of areas, but that's part of that landscape too, of looking around at where people started and how they've moved forward and where they are in their careers and what hats they wear. Can we get to networking now? We've touched on this a little bit, different areas where this is in reference to how important that it is in general. And you're all here because we have this amazing network of Wolverines. There's certainly the 700,000 Michigan alums, the 80,000 engineering alums, and then this beautiful little group of 12,000 or so chemie alums. So the concentric circles of networks that are part of this family are great opportunities. So that's one area that certainly we can touch on. But when interns are working this summer, what are the most valuable networking opportunities? What ideas and tips do you have for them?
Yeah, so I think others have already like mentioned this, but I think exploring areas outside of the team you're specifically working in is a really good thing to do, and you can do that in a methodical way, or you can just do it in a natural way. You meet someone and you say like, hey, what are you working on? Ask other interns, where are they working on, or their teams, or you can like start setting up coffee chats with different departments to just 30-minute intro. I know at ExxonMobil we do that for all interns so they can get exposure to like each part of the company, given it spreads so many different parts of the oil and gas and low carbon economy supply chains. So it can be kind of daunting when you work for such a large company to like really get all of that exposure. So, I do think that the internship's a great opportunity to learn about different areas outside of the one that you are specifically working in, and you're not going to be able to do any kind of like deep dive into those, but you can at least get an idea of would this be something I'd be interested in.
I guess one more thing to add, like, sorry, Madison. If you have like a mentor or a person you're reporting to, try to leverage their network. Like, let them know you're interested in learning about other parts of the company, and they're probably more than happy to show off other things, or contact their friends in the company and take you around to different places, or help you meet people who might give you a different perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And adding on to that, I think, well, when I was an intern and I had a manager I had a project sponsor, I had a buddy, and a mentor. I was given a lot of resources, and I'm really thankful General Mills does that. At first, it's kind of a lot, but like I really did use those different people for like a variety of different needs that I had as an intern and to get many different questions answered. So that was really helpful. But on top of that, my manager, when I first started, gave me a list of like 20 to 30 people as key contacts. And he's like, you need to meet with these people sometime throughout the summer. I'm not going to be checking in on you to make sure you did it, but like this is up to you. And these are really people who are very knowledgeable on different things or could offer you this or this. And as an introvert, I was like, oh my goodness, that's so scary. But it's like seriously, it really helped me build those connections that, like I said, I'm still using to this day. And when you meet with those people, and ask them questions, they're going to connect you, like Michelle said, with other people, and it just keeps spanning from there, and it's super cool. And you know, I worked in cereal, but I could have asked, hey, like, can I shadow, you know, so and so on a snacks pilot plant run, because that's happening in our building, but it's not a place I'd normally go down to, but I could get cool learnings there. And then other thing I would add would be, it was kind of easier when I was an intern since I was remote, but connecting with other interns, like people have said, is also really valuable, just to see maybe there's some other chemical engineering interns who have different projects that are super interesting to you, not necessarily what you're working on, but something different. So that's a good way to learn what others are doing. But also I would try to have coffee chats with people and interns like across the country, like in our plants, working like a food safety and quality role or like a more manufacturing centered role or supply chain, because that wasn't directly what I was doing in R&D, but it was still something that interested me, and I wanted to see like what they were getting out of it to see if that's something that might like interest me in the future. So if you're able to do that, I'd recommend that.
Fantastic. You know that your answer though made me think a little bit about, I don't know, how did any advice you have for students who are coming into a real first time work experience in industry, in a field that this might be their life's work, or at least their first job in the start of their career. That's nerve-wracking, that the feel of imposter syndrome, of really not having to break out of your shell, and be bold. Do you have any advice for students to take that deep breath and jump in?
One thing I'll say is most of the people you're going to meet were in your shoes once, and we love interns. I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but like we love connecting with interns, sharing our experiences, because we know that we were them like not too long ago. And so I think everyone you're going to meet is hopefully going to be very welcoming and really willing to share about their career, about triumphs they've gone through at work, but also like things that have been really hard, just so you can learn from that. So I think just go in. I know it's hard. Imposter syndrome is definitely a thing, but go in kind of thinking like they were in your shoes not too long ago and they want to help you have the best experience at that company.
Yeah, I would agree with Madison's comments and sentiments around like there's definitely just like an energy and a buzz. Like you can tell when the interns are there over the summer versus like the rest of the year. Not that it's not still great in its own right, but they definitely do bring a certain energy and excitement to the team that I think everyone, you know, in the company gets excited to have them around. And I also think in terms of like, you know, taking that first leap or taking that first jump of putting yourself out there, is that like I think you know, there is recognition that it can be scary, especially if you're someone who's maybe not naturally, you know, extroverted or outgoing. But I also think it's one of those things, like think of it as a skill that you're building, where like you're probably like maybe it's not going to go perfectly the first time, and a lot of people probably don't expect it to go perfectly the first time when you're, you know, your first internship while you're in college. But over time, you know, you continue to practice it, you do it again and again, and then it doesn't become so scary. And just like any other skill you've worked on developing, or you know, technical competency you focused on learning, over time you just get better the more you keep practicing it. So I would say part of it is like managing your own expectations of how it's going to go, and just know that, you know, with practice, like anything else, it'll become a little bit more second nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not fake it till you make it, but work on it. Yeah. Skylar, who had to drop off of this, had 2 summer internships back to back at SC Johnson, and now works at SC Johnson. So this question relates to how ChE students, when they're in their summer internship, can position themselves to ideally leverage this for a job offer. Do you have any advice or tips or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can I can take this one. I think companies hire interns for pipeline purposes to basically have a first trial of somebody before they hire them full time. I know at ExxonMobil, we really try to heavily recruit from our intern pools, and I know other companies do the same thing. And my advice on landing the potential full-time job is understanding what are the values, what is the culture of the company you're working for, as well as, how is the work you're doing driving value for the organization. If you can, I think it's really important, obviously the technical aspects are of critical importance, but understanding the business drivers, and how the work you're doing contributes to generating shareholder value, if it's a public company, or, value for if it's a private or government agency, how it's generating value is extremely important. And doing that from early on can be of critical importance. But also not even, if you can also use your internship experience to help you land a job elsewhere. I mean, that's exactly what I did. I never interned at ExxonMobil. I utilized my experiences at all of my other internships to really sell myself as a great candidate, for them. And think, ultimately what I found valuable, what I found very helpful was understanding how what I am working on is driving value for the company in these different internships I've had. So if you can understand that, I think that's very, very critical, and it's a differentiator to others who may not be thinking in that same way.
I think the other two pieces of advice I would add is to first and foremost with, whoever you report to, whoever your supervisor is, be candid with them. If that is your wish, is to, get a full-time offer from the company you're interning for, be open in that conversation that is what your hope is, so that you can be aware of sort of what the process looks like, what goes into that evaluation. Is there going to be an interview? If so, when would that be? So that, there's clarity on both sides that, this is the intent, this is the goal. How do we make it happen? And have ongoing conversations about that throughout the summer. The other thing I would recommend is that, if you are at a company that has had multiple interns in the past that have been interns and then converted to full-time employees, would be to connect with those individuals and get their feedback and advice on what they felt like went well, that helped set them up for success in terms of getting the conversion. Because every company is going to be a little bit different on how they go about this and what time of year they make that decision. Some companies, it's right at the end of the summer, based off of your work. Some there's an interview portion. Some it's 6 months later once they figure out what their openings are for your around the graduation time. So I think just having those open, honest, candid conversations, as well as getting the advice of people who have successfully made that trajectory.
So getting back to Michigan, how in your experience, in your careers, and how important is that Michigan network? Has that been a factor that you've seen be important to you or to others around you?
In my career, it's been of critical importance. So the job I got right after my undergrad, where I was only working for 4 months, I got from a University of Michigan alumni. He had came and spoken at one of the classes, a couple years back. And I just reached out to him and explained my situation, that, hey, I'm going to grad school. But I've finished ChE degree, here's my resume. Didn't hear back from him, but just kept following up. So persistence is important too. And it turned out that he had some capacity to take me on a part-time 4-month period as a full-time employee. And the skill set that I developed in that working experience was pretty much the main driver for how I got my job at ExxonMobil.
I guess I already mentioned too that, I mean, I found my job at GM through Susan Montgomery, you know, from another ChE department person who worked at GM that was looking for someone to you know, hire someone. And ever since I've been here too, you're constantly meeting people that have some association with U of M, which automatically, like, you know, you automatically have that connection then. And it's just a cool thing to be a part of, for sure, and helpful in your career.
Yeah, similarly, when I was a freshman in that E100 like food science class, I remember Julia McMurtry. She was a chemie who was quite a few years above me, but she came back because she was in industry at that time to come present on what she was doing at General Mills. And I thought it sounded like the coolest thing ever. And it was so cool that someone who was in my shoes like 5 years prior could be doing what she was doing. And so that's kind of what I set my sights on from there. I found her at Career Fair the next year and the year after, and I made sure to really make it clear that I really wanted to work at that company. And less than a year ago, I was just working on a team with her now full time, and we go back and do recruiting now. So I think really keeping close to that Wolverine network is super awesome. And like Michelle said, like even at work, there's an alumni network, and it's super fun to go back to campus in the fall with that group and recruit you guys. So yeah, I'd say stay tight to your Wolverines if you have any around.
And I guess the other thing I would say is maybe since I graduated, I lived in Iowa, Missouri, Nevada, and then moved to Minnesota. And one thing that was common in all of those places I lived is that there was a group of Michigan alumni that I could meet. So maybe it wasn't necessarily specific for a career, but at least in terms of having a sense of community almost everywhere I went, to, you know, like watch games or anything of that sort. There was always Michigan alumni around. And so it always kind of had that element of fun or like excitement or just helping have a sense of community in a place where I, you know, maybe moved and didn't know anybody right off the bat.
Well,
Adding on to that,
oh, go
really
ahead.
quick, if once you graduate, which I don't know how far away that is for some of you, but make sure you change your address in, I don't know, is it Wolverine Access or something, to where you move to, because that's how you'll get connected to like alumni clubs. And like I'm on the email this list for like the Minneapolis, like Twin Cities. I'm sure Molly, you are too, for the alumni network there. So it's super cool. We get hockey tickets, football tickets to like the local games. So it's fun to go as an alumni group.
Well, and the two of you there are, you're the other U of M in Minnesota. So you've got to represent Michigan and our colors differently than most people that are U of M fans there do. I'd love to talk a little bit about representation. In the last question, then we have a few from the audience here, but DEI goals at the university are really important. And as we look at our students going into industry and feeling like they see themselves there, can you speak to opportunities for interns to make sure they have access and feel included and really feel seen and visible in the company, and how important that is to your organizations and what kind of programs or processes you have in place to help students or interns and employees?
I can
There's a
mention
question.
for GM. I mean, I've been here a long time, you know, and when I started, there were a lot of people who had been here for like 30 years. Like most people in my workplace had been here a very long time. Like I couldn't even relate to them on like you know, the types of things we were interested in a lot of the time. And it was dominated by men mostly. But like, I think, you know, you just try to do your best work and connect in the ways you can, and it all worked out fine. But I will say GM has shifted a lot in the 15 years I've been here. I mean, now a lot of that's turned over. There's a lot more younger people. There's a huge emphasis on DE&I. Like it's one of the key things that we talk about regularly, being inclusive and embracing diversity. And it's become a lot more diverse, I think, over the years too. So.
I know it varies a little bit depending on like company size and like the size of the internship program, what kind of offerings might be available. But one thing I know Boston Scientific has is a variety of employee resource groups. You know, these are all sort of groups that celebrate different, you know, cultures and things of that sort. And most of them do special programming in the summer for interns, for individuals who identify with said culture. So I would ask, is that something you're interested in? Ask your manager about it to like get you connected to the resources so you can find out about the events and get to know the people who are part of it. And they probably have some, good advice as well. So again, might vary depending on, the company. I know my first job out of college was in a really small factory in a small town in Iowa. So like on site specifically, there weren't a ton of these types of employee resource groups and things. So in that situation, I really relied on like building relationships and mentors. But then now being at a much larger facility, a little bit more available locally. So I would say look into things like that when you get there.
Yeah, exact same for General Mills as well. I think if you have the opportunity as an intern to kind of dive into like our affinity groups, we have a lot to offer. We have like a Women's Leadership Network, Asian Leadership Network, Black Champions Network, LGBTQ plus like network. So a lot of cool opportunities. And like Molly said, they'll host a lot of programs in the summer while our interns are here too. It's also a great opportunity to network, like we talked about earlier. So I think it's twofold there, but a great place to find like a smaller community and like a big company.
It's all really helpful, everybody. A couple of questions that are coming in from the chat. What are the biggest challenges that interns face, ChE interns can face in their summer experience, and what advice do you have to overcome challenges that you've seen people experience?
One of the challenges I've seen interns have on different levels is not leveraging all of the resources around them. Like I think everyone's alluded to it, but interns are really exciting to have in your company, and people are so willing to help if you just ask. And unless you ask, no one will know that you're even struggling with whether it's a technical problem or maybe a lot of our interns are coming from out of state, so that can be very challenging. Moving to Houston, Texas in the middle of summer, it's super hot here. And just leverage the people in your team, ask for help when you can, and don't be ashamed to do that, whether it's a technical, whether it's a personal, or any type of problem. People are really willing to help out, but unless you say something, then they'll never know that you may be going through challenge. So doing that earlier rather than later, and just having an open line of communication and trust with your mentor or supervisor or whoever, I think is of critical importance.
Yeah, sort of along those lines, I would say, like, I can definitely picture myself walking into my first internship, getting my project assignment, and honestly having no idea like where to start, feeling totally overwhelmed. Like I'm never going to be able to figure this out or make anything tangible come of this because this isn't something we learn about in school, and all those kinds of things. So I guess the first thing I would say is that is how you feel. Like, I think that's very normal, given that a lot of times what you're going to see in industry is not going to be a one-to-one to what you see in the classroom. But I think the thing I would say is, like, one, take a step back, be confident in your skill set. You were chosen for this role for a reason. And, the people who hired you have confidence in what, you demonstrated in your interview process. And then I think it's just sort of one of those things where it's like, you kind of just have to get started. And like, maybe the first one or two things you think of or you try for your project don't hit immediately or work the way you expect them to. But at least now you've got the ball rolling, and that's also where you can talk with people and say like, hey, I tried to start this project, I tried this thing, it didn't work. What advice do you have? Where maybe have I gone wrong? But I guess I would just say, like, start wherever you think you can start, and don't be afraid to ask for help. But it is, I think, okay and normal to be a little overwhelmed the first few days.
I have a related. Oh, go ahead.
Along those lines, like the project work can sometimes be tough. And like Molly said, it just takes, trying things. I mean, that's what we do in our jobs every day too. Like not everything works the first time, and that's just part of our job. But also just like learning how to be an intern, and work like a 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever hours you work, and not knowing everything. And I think that's just something you're gonna have to accept. And like everyone said, like that's just part of being an intern, and your full-time counterparts like totally understand that. So I think just having a little bit of grace on yourself.
I think not only do they understand, but they expect it, right? Like you're expected that you don't know everything and you're going to need some help. So it's okay.
A related question from somebody, what if I don't like my manager or the work? Now you're in the summer and you're 4 weeks in and it's not for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would encourage you to be honest and transparent. There could be opportunity to shift, projects. I don't know if you can shift managers, but I do think, as others on the call have alluded to, one of the most important skills in the workforce is being able to work with people from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different interpersonal personalities, etc. So if you don't like them, you use it as a learning opportunity to learn how to work with challenging people, because you'll have to do that no matter where you go in the workforce. So those are the two pieces of advice I'd give.
Sorry, go ahead, Molly.
Oh, no, you can go.
I would just say you could change your mind by the end, so keep trying, but then just remember it's for a finite time. You can find a different job after your internship.
Yeah. The other thing that I think I would add is maybe the manager piece might be a little bit different, but I do think taking the time to reflect on like what it is that's not working specifically with the managers, that if you do ever find yourself in a leadership position, you can have that memory of like, well, these are the kinds of things that I didn't respond well to. So let me keep that in my toolkit of, how I would want to be if I was ever in a leadership type position. Similarly with the project or the work, like I think kind of like I was alluding to with my internship experience, I didn't really love the project work, but I took the time to reflect of like, why don't I like this project work, so that I could then use that information to make a better decision for my first full-time job, which was like, I was spending a lot of time in a lab. Turns out I don't really like being in a lab. I loved being out on the production floor. So then my first, role out of college was a more operations focused, and that's sort of where now my whole career has taken me. So I would just say, just because something is not like a perfect fit right off the bat, I would try to maybe have like taking a little spin on it and just see what you can learn from it and how you can apply that. Because like Michelle said, it's finite. And although that can feel difficult in the moment, in the long run, it could actually really serve you and maybe prevent you from taking a full-time job that you don't like. So
it's all data.
Yes.
Well, we're just about out of time. I want to thank the four of you for participating today. Our alumni are just amazing and so dedicated to the department, and we just you have such a wealth of wisdom. We really appreciate you coming back and sharing it with our students today. And students, we hope you found something valuable here today. So everybody, enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are, and thank you, and go Blue.